political and campaign finance is complex and multifaceted. However, we believe that by working, we can promote transparency, accountability, fairness in Nigerian electoral process. I invite you to engage with us as we discuss the implication of our findings and explore ways to tackle the challenges of campaign finance in Nigeria. Our insight and expertise are both invaluable in shaping policy recommendation and advocacy efforts that will advance our goal of ensuring accountability in political and campaign financing. At KDI, we are dedicated to promoting transparency, accountability, integrity, and fairness in the Nigerian electoral process. This report that we will be presenting today offers an in-depth examination of the role of money in shaping electoral outcomes, revealing critical insight into campaign expenditure trend, financial transparency, and compliance with Nigerian political finance law. Finally, I would like to express our deepest gratitude to the UK Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office for their support in executing this project. Your support has enabled us on this critical issue of political and campaign finance in Nigeria and electoral process. I will also want to thank and appreciate the team at KDI for their relentless effort in ensuring the successful implementation of this project. It was one project we tried out, and it's more or less like all hands have to be on deck, testing a methodology, and then working around this for the first time. It's also very, very revealing. I thank you guys, and I especially again and again, I can't thank the FCDO enough. Dr. Matthew Ayibakoro, Mr. Odumu, I can't tell you, where is VAR too? Thank you so much for your support, and we are fulfilled today that we will be presenting this report today, and by the time we just have a presentation, you will see what the landscape look like. I encourage you to please engage at the during the conversation, and let's have, we so much believe that this report is going to be useful for all of us, civil society, the regulatory body, ICPC, EFCC, INEC, everybody, to see how we will shape the policy around political and campaign finance going forward. Thank you so much for coming, and I wish you all a productive and engaging discussion today. Thank you.
Another round of applause for the ED. We'll be going straight to the next item on the agenda, which is goodwill message. I learned that the representative of the chairman, Independent Corrupt Practices Commission, is on his way, and also the Inter-Party Advisory Council deputy chairman, who is representing the chairman, is also on his way. So we won't be able to wait. We'll just move straight to take the goodwill message of the FCDO, and that will be taken by Mr. Matt Kuro. A round of applause for him. Dr. Matthew Aibakuro.
I don't think you needed to add the last part. Good morning, everyone. It's always a privilege to be here. KDI seems to be doing these sort of events quite often lately, and it's a demonstration of the dedication of your team you referred to previously. I'm really happy to see some of the very amazing faces in the space. In the last few weeks, it's been a bit near depressing when we see these faces. So it's good to see some smiling faces in the room today. As always, it's a privilege to be here, and on behalf of FCDO Nigeria, we want to congratulate you for the work you've done up to this point on political financing. And as FCDO, as always, we're really glad to be partnering you and to be supporting this very important work that you're doing. I could say 100 lines about the importance of this work, but as we all know, political finance is at the very heart of democratic integrity. I do recall, this is predating my FCDO days, in the lead up to one of the elections in my state, in Bayelsa. We sat down as, well, relatively younger people then, and as most young people in Nigeria were really frustrated about the state of politics in the state, and we thought, you know what, we need to get a young candidate that we can put forward for the next elections, and we are all going to support this young candidate to change things. And everybody we spoke to was totally on board with this idea. And we started thinking through what it would take, what are the plans and everything. And at the first meeting we called, at the meeting, was the conversation on money and how much it would take. And so we had invited somebody from the ruling party at the time to come and brief us on how much they spend on like governorship elections, Senate, House of Reps, so that we have an understanding of what it is. It was a good thing we put that agenda at the end of the meeting, because I remember the first line he told us. He's like, well, I'm going to start from the bottom up, so let me start from House of Assembly. If any of you want to contest for House of Assembly and you ask me to work on your campaign and you don't show me 50 million naira, I won't even talk to you because you're not ready. And then he said, if it's House of Rep, if you don't have 200 million naira already put down somewhere, don't even come and waste our time and talk to us. I don't want to go to the figure he said when he got to governor. But I have to say, when he left the room, we updated our strategy. And we decided that instead of putting forward a candidate for the election, we would rather form an NGO and engage with the political process to ensure that there is transparency and accountability in the process. But that is the challenge of political financing. And working through this is very complicated, but I think at the core of most of the democratic governance problems we solve is data, is information, and that is why these sort of reports are a very good place to start off from, to start unraveling the mechanics around this and then deciding how best to engage with it. Our support for this project is obviously part of our broader portfolio in support of democracy in Nigeria, which includes work with Parliament, the judiciary, civil society, and other key stakeholders, including INEC, that is not yet here. And it's also part of our commitment to the broad shared democratic principles everybody here in the room have, including transparency, inclusivity, but very importantly in the context of Nigeria, ensuring there is public trust in our democratic processes. We do recognize that the significance of the report that KDI is releasing today is both intrinsic but also instrumental. We know that it is not an end in itself. Data can be very fun, but we do understand that in this sense, data is also a tool for reform and hopefully a call for action. And so we want to congratulate Bukola and the team, but also a lot of the field staff, some of whom I'm happy to hear are here today, who have put in all the time and effort to getting this work done. And we look forward to partnering you in the next phase of this work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Matthew Aibakuru. I think in your narration you put it lightly that to contest House of Rep, you need 200 million ready. Within the political contest, they will tell you you must have 200 million to set on fire. So it simply means such amount of money, let go whether you win or not. So that's how tricky and dicey the situation is in Nigeria. So while we expect the Independent Corrupt Practices Commission's representative and the Inter-Party Advisory Council, IPAC, to come and give us goodwill message, we'll just go straight to presentation of the campaign finance monitoring finding. This will be done by Mr. Oluwafemi John Adebayo. He is the head of research and strategy. A round of applause for him, please.
so much, Dan. Good morning, everyone. So nice to see us this morning. I think quite a lot have gone ahead regarding the dicey nature and the complexity around political finance in Nigeria. Please take us through the findings as much and as fast as I can, because time is of essence. Okay, so just a background understanding of what this looks like for us. We set out to look at what is called the campaign finance. We understood, or we got to, having the understanding of the complexity around the whole process. And when we got into the deep, when we dived and we got into the deep, the discovery is that it seems that campaign expenditure or campaign finance is just like 0. Okay, I shouldn't be conservative too much. Maybe campaign expenditure is just, say, 10% of what political finance is. So at that point, we thought of it that it is very important for us to also, as daring as we are, to move into the deep and let go of our fears and everything. So we moved into tracking what we now refer to as political finance. So, and that is where the whole coinage came from, the poly money. So it's just basically talking about how money. All right. Of course, I'll be taking us through the methodology. I'll be taking us through the key findings. We'll also entertain questions, comment, and so for us, the project in itself is basically to track political finance in the country and basically to ensure there is transparency and accountability in that particular process. So we tracked, document, and of course analyzed what we call the electoral or political finance surrounding every of the activities. So if we go into the Electoral Act, section 89(1) of it, really defined what election expenses are. And if that's it really spoke extensively. And very many of us are not even aware that the Electoral Act defined election expenses as all funds of finances that goes into the electoral process, starting from the point where notice of election has been given. So as an aspirant, it actually defined election expenses as part of it. But so we saw that there is also a basis for us to expand our scope to go into political finance and not be constrained with campaign finance. So like I said, our aim is to promote it and ensure that there are bases, empirical basis also to propose stronger regulatory frameworks and of course reforms that is needed in that particular process. I think by and large, I've been able to also speak about the goal. I've been able to speak about the objective of the project, and is also what it's of course sensitize the people as much as we can, and on the broader scale to also complement INEC's effort as much as it is, so that there is also need to help INEC with data that will help them to be able to perform their constitutional mandate that has to do with enforcement of the law and regulatory provisions. Let me quickly, there are legal instruments on political finance, which is very important for us to note that one of that there are bases for this, because the legal instrument, if you look at Electoral Act, if you look at the Constitution, from section 225 even to 228, spoke extensively on political finance. If you look at the INEC political finance manual, INEC did have a manual, and of course a guideline for political parties. So if you go to paragraph 45 of the INEC guideline for political parties 2022, you will also see a lot of conversations around political finance in the country. But of course, INEC didn't do that on their own accord. The Electoral Act, if we move and we go to section, if we go to section 71 thereabout, also gave INEC the mandate to come up, most especially with the ceiling around the contribution of an individual, or contribution in terms of finance or asset of an individual. So those are just the legal instrument and on the basis where we moved and dive into tracking all of this. Of course, for us at KDI, so much big and we take very seriously the methodology we're going to be deploying at every given point. So the very first thing was to move into a methodology workshop where we looked at different methodologies and approaches that could be used. And of course, we brought together INEC, we brought together experts that have done a lot of work on political and campaign monitoring, together institutions in the country, like the likes of HIFES. We brought together even people that has optimum knowledge around, and we looked at the methodologies available, and we were able to ensure that the nuances around the political finance structure in the country is at work, is at play, and we factor that in. So, of course, we then decide that the monitoring approach will be the parallel estimation techniques, which a lot of persons call PET. The methodology used by the International Foundation for Electoral System, IFES. It has been used in other countries, even to some extent also in Nigeria. But we didn't stop at that. One of the things we did was to now have like an hybrid approach, because eventually we also brought in some best practices and thought from the Open Justice Initiative, some of their what we call their best practices that they've also been used over time. So this is basically what it looks like mathematically, just estimating what the future looks like. So as put it straight, please someone help me, please, technical guys, to the microphone, please. Mathematically, it's just basically just talking about the way we go to the market and we transact businesses. Okay, I want to buy an apple. The first question the person that want to sell will ask is, how many apples do you need? So if I need 5 apples, then the individuals or the person will tell me, oh, the apple, one of it goes naira. So that one of it goes for 100 naira, right? So it behooves on me to multiply 5 to give me 500. And if I can negotiate, I can still reduce it, right? Reduce the price. So it's just the same process that we use to be able to look at market value for some of the things that have been tracked to be able to estimate. So I need to put it very clearly that this methodology deals with estimation. All right, are we together? Are we together? All right, thank you. Deals with estimation. So at that point, what we did was to also look at the monitors on the field. In Edo State, we deployed 45 of them. In Ondo State, we deployed 3 of the monitors. And of course, one of the things we did was to have dedicated monitors also that can give us insight into whatever is happening at the media landscape. And of course, the tracking period, which is very important for me to say, is between July and September. For very many of us that were very much, we keep track and we are abreast of whatsoever is happening in the electoral landscape in the country, we will understand that in Edo State, campaign officially started around April 19, to be precise. So what that means, and I need to point that out to us, is that for Edo State, whatever happened in April, to some extent, were not captured, because eventually July to September was what we did. But for Ondo, it was also from July to November. Just to point that out to us. What did we monitor? Because at the end of the day, we were able, or we can only monitor what we can see. So it's also very important for me to set this background and a disclaimer that we only tracked and document what eyes can see. So whatever eyes cannot see, especially those ones that passed under the table, we didn't track that, because we are not fetish, we are not diabolical, no spiritual power. for us to deduce that. So please, very important. So we looked at campaign expenditure. We looked at the election day also expenditure as much as we can. There are limitations to some extent to even methodologies. There are limitations. And we are always not shy to talk about the limitation we experience because we believe that we put whatever we're saying into context. So one of the things that we saw that also was at play is the significant limitation which has to do with the reluctance of most politicians, I must say, financial details that has to do with whatsoever the party or the candidate expended alongside. So it was quite difficult. And that is also attached to the word disclosure. Disclosure is also a big issue in the country regarding political finance. And as I speak to us today, if we look at the legal framework, when it comes to disclosure, it's also not well defined. If we look at it, it's also not well defined. So as it stands today, disclosure maybe from media on political expenditure is also, they are not obligated, let me put it that way, they are not obliged to even give that details to INEC, except if INEC has other legal instrument to be able to use. But as far as the Electoral Act is concerned, whatsoever, I'm using the media as an example because there are a lot more. They are not obliged to also even give INEC that information. But it's also very important there is that linkage, because that will also make the work of the regulatory, which is INEC, to be easy. Transparency regarding that. In short, one of the things we discovered is also when you take out the known income, and I use the word known income to be specific, it doesn't align and commensurate with the expenditure. So you see expenditure as high as in billions, but income that are known, and I use that word deliberately, also not matching up. In short, it is like 10 times lower than what we have. So then the question becomes, if you're spending that amount when it comes to expenditure, how were you able to get the money to finance or to fund that? So there is a big question mark on the income. So it has, okay, let me quickly move on so that I can speak to what the slide is. If you look at Edo State in terms of known income regarding Edo State, one of the known income is the donation from the APC caucus to the candidate of the APC, Monday, who happened to be one of them before he won the primaries and went for that race, was 200 million, to his campaign council. And of course, we looked at the sales of form of the parties also as an income to the party, right? So in Edo State, we looked at that there were 12 of them that actually vowed for the primaries in Edo State, which is about 600 million. And of course, let me say this, that the sales of form is both expression of interest. We merge the two together, and the nomination form. That's very important for me to state and for us to know. So if you look at APC, known income is around 800 million. Okay? If we go to Edo State, if you look at Labour, LP, 25 of them at 30 million. That is amounting to 750 million to the party. And there were donations also. Those donations were in kind, not monetary donations. So we also estimated all of those also to the party, which is about 280 million. We talk about the Sienna buses, which were even on the media space. They were donated before even the primaries by the person who eventually became the candidate of LP in Edo State, Olumide Akpata, and also some of the furnitures that were donated to the party across the local government. Just to say that, of course, there were known donation to PDP, but when it comes to the sales of form and the expression of interest, we realized that the party were able to put together 650 million. Okay, let's move to Ondo State very quickly. In Ondo State, we didn't get any known donation to any of the parties in Ondo State, but when it comes to the sales of form, PDP got estimated to be about 315 million, APC 800 million, and of course for Labour Party, that was not known. Let me quickly move on to now the overall figure. There were put together from our tracking. So, all right, in Edo State, and I'll break this down further. In Edo State, our estimation led us to realize that the amount of money that went into that candidate in Edo State is 9.6 billion. The figures are there, right? 9.6 billion. If we go to Ondo State, 3.7 billion. Right, I could see smiling in the faces of the people. I've been looking at their faces. I could see the smile. Like I said, we're able to track what eyes can see. Very important. And of course, let's quickly move on. One of the things we discovered is the third-party expenditure that is now making, has always been actually, but is now becoming so much entrenched in the political finance structure and system. So in Edo State, we saw 43.5% of the expenditure tracked were third parties expenses, spending. In Ondo, 57.2% of those. So what is third party expenditure or spending? Third party expenditure is something expenditure made by an individual that is not directly from either the campaign council, the political party, or let me say otherwise, the candidate. But maybe somebody independently decided to contribute benevolently, right? Sometimes it's also with the knowledge of the candidate, sometimes without the knowledge. It's very important to state that. So that is what we regard as third-party expenditure. There are quite a lot of things to say around that. When I go to that point, we will talk about it. Very, very important. I think the next question that will be in the mind of every one of us is, there is 9.6 billion somewhere, there is 3.7 in the other state. Then section 88.3 of the Electoral Act actually place a limitation regarding the expenditure of candidate, to say a governorship candidate cannot spend more than 1 billion. But in some instances, we had expenditure arising to like 9-point-something billion. So the question is there a breach of this provision of the Electoral Act? That is the question. So we looked at that as much as we can. And if you look at the breakdown, please let's move. The breakdown per candidate, this is what it looks like. Breakdown per candidate. And I must say that the figure that we have, the 9-point-something billion that we have on the screen, is both the combination of the campaign expenditure and of course the election day expenditure. I need to say that. All right. So if you look at it, the same thing goes to this. We have the APC and Monday spent as high as 3.8. We have PDP 3.5. We have Olumide Akpata also 2.3. That is what it looks like. If we move to Ondo State, this is what Ondo State also looks like in terms of the figures. But there's something I will say here because it is very important. And it's very important to list that out. If you move back to Edo State, please, if you go back to Edo State, you discover that there are some candidates at that instance that, I don't know if it is to use the word measure up, or maybe in terms of the financial strength is not there. But you look at the disparities. You have candidates even spending as low from the tracking as 400,000. Then it begs for questions because there are different thoughts around this. Right. The financial disparity in terms of strength is so wide. So we start having conversations. Personally, this is my personal thought, and I'll continue to say this. Please, this is my personal thought. It's not of KDI. And it's the fact that we then have to start talking about, I use the word seriously, in terms of the seriousness of this individual. Or is it because our elections have been so monetized that even when you don't have the resources and you're competent, it's difficult for you to even get to the winning part. So these are the questions in the head of someone like me that, okay, is it about the issue of maybe seriousness, or is the issue of the fact that the electoral process has been so monetized, heavily monetized, that even people, if they have competence, let me put it that way, it is very difficult to even be able to get to that part. Or maybe someone like me, that have not tasted my father And my mother also, at every point of their life, worked as a civil servant. So I didn't inherit any money anywhere. Even if I'm competent more than anything, I have a dream that this country will be better through my endeavors. It will be difficult for me to get there. These are the thoughts I want to raise regarding this. But of course, let's go back to where we're coming from. Where we're coming from is answering the question around the breach of 88.3. Then the next thing to state is, of course, these are the percentages, and I think it's very important. But let me tell you, and I'll be clear with it, answering that question in Nigeria as it stands today is very difficult. Very difficult. And I'll give you some few points why it is difficult. Number one, the Electoral Act differentiated. The Electoral Act differentiated between the candidate expenditure and the political party expenditure. I remember, like I said in 88.3, 1 billion for governorship. But when it comes to the political parties, I think in around 89 thereabout, not so sure, the Electoral Act said INEC should sit with the political parties to set the ceiling for the political parties. So there is a different ceiling for political parties, there is a different ceiling for candidate. But in reality, difficult. It is quite difficult in reality to separate the expenditure of candidate and political parties. It is extremely difficult in reality. So that alone in itself makes it difficult to answer that question. And if you notice, in the previous slide, whatsoever expenditure that we have is basically talking about both party and the candidate. Are we together? Both parties, the parties and the candidate. So that's the very first thing. Then it begs for us to look at it. Is it then easy for us to stop the disaggregation around political parties and candidate? On paper, maybe it's also very important to stop that, to say when it comes to campaign expenditure, either party or candidate, the ceiling is this. Yeah, that's the first thing. The second thing was the third party spending or expenditure that I mentioned earlier. So you have individuals out of their will or free will. Sometimes we saw that happening a lot in both Edo and Ondo State. People just put their picture, in short, kings, traditional leaders, put their pictures and do billboards freely for candidates, right? They put their pictures, say, courtesy of this. And we dig deep to discover these are likely individuals that want to contribute to that process, and eventually, maybe they are expecting something in return. They want the candidate to see them that they support the process. When the time comes, maybe for appointment, so that they can also put a moral burden on such candidate to be able to give them something. That exists a lot. But that is not all. That is not the only reason. Other reasons involved in this also is there are sometimes it is also channeling this money through third party to be able to not to be caught, actually, section 88.3. So one of the things that is also very critical also to note is that there are also, I use the word pseudo, but it's popularly, it's coming to say unregistered organization. I think that's the very important word to note. Unregistered organization put together for the purpose of electioneering, channeling money through them. So we have quite a lot of them. And of course, it may also be from their own will. Not every time they channel money through them. But if you look at it, we have a lot of them also within the system in the two elections regarding political spending. Okay, this is like an advert on Vanguard, to be precise. You see something like the Old Boys Vanguard. You see something like Transformation Group. But we did a lot of search on a platform like CSC. They are not registered. So, of course, many of us, we know that this used to be, but as it stands today, it is creating a lot of avenue for illicit funding of the process, which is very important. If we want to get it right, it's very important for us to look at all of these things because it is key. I think, of course, that is also a breach of section 221 of the Constitution, because the Constitution expressly said this, and I will read clearly, word for word. It said, no association other than a political party shall canvass for votes for any candidate at any elections or contribute to the fund of any political party or to the election expenses of any candidate at an election. This is the ground norm. The Constitution said this. This is not even the Electoral Act. But in reality, we see unregistered organizations also putting in money into this. And to some extent, where it becomes very interesting is that sometimes it's even above the specified limit of the contribution of an individual. But one of the things that are taught for us in KDI is there are limits for third-party contribution. Please get this very well. There are limits for third-party contribution, which is 50 million, according to the Electoral Act. But the Electoral Act is typically silent on third-party spending. So, maybe the question is third-party spending the same thing as third-party contribution? If you contribute, is it the same thing as spending? It's a very big question that the law did not answer. I think we then need to now look at if there are case law or precedents, according to what they say, that are what have always been to be able to answer this question. But these are some of the things that we saw, very important. And of course, we looked at how whatsoever we tracked in terms of political finance actually informed the campaign strategy and of course the outlook of the campaign, because we really linked this to the campaign. One of the things we saw is that campaign events accounted for 54 to 56% of the total campaign expenditure that we tracked. That's the very first thing. And it's very important for us to note this. In both states, that's what it is. So it then means that political party went as far or did more around in-person engagement, even in the two states. But let's quickly move. This is what it looks like. This is what it looks like in terms of the breakdown figures based on the expenditure type, campaign, broadcast ad. And when we say broadcast ad, we're talking about both TV and radio. TV and radio, and of course, it's very important. This is what it looks like in Ondo State in terms of the expenditure. Now, you will also realize there is a stark difference in the total campaign investment in both states. You will notice that in Ondo State, you're talking about the realms of millions, but in Edo State, you're talking about the realms of billions. Now, that begs for the question of competitiveness of the process. But if you now move, one of the things we now saw is that political parties are gradually shifting. Okay? Political parties are gradually shifting from strategies that has to do with static outdoor advertisement, which is static, to what we give them mass number. So we talk about mass mobilization, which has to do with campaign event. We then have to talk about what is regarded as mass media, like the TV. So those two things, there are greater investment from the political parties moving into that. So if you look at the data, and this is what it looks like. For instance, 82% of the total money they committed into their campaign spending is in Edo. 82% is basically on mass mobilization and mass media. So things like billboard, things like flyer, posters, I'm very careful to say, it seems it is fading out. And this is not just about Nigeria. One of the things we also saw is that we looked as much as possible. When you get the report, you see as much as possible how we're able to use global best practices to be able to also explain some of these things. It's not just in Nigeria. There are studies about political communication that is already talking about the fading out of all of those strategies in political campaign, which is very key and very important. And of course, if you look at it, Labour Party in Edo State, to be precise, really prioritize media work over grand work in Edo State. But in a way, obviously and conspicuously absent in Edo. And there were a bit of explanation for that in Edo State. We should remember that in Edo State, when it comes to, Ondo State, when it comes to Labour Party, there was a court judgment about 2 days to the elections that is restoring Festus as against Ebisheni, who has always been the one on the scene. So that also could have accounted for the low appearance of Labour Party in Ondo State. But of course, there are so much around the grand mobilization in Edo State, and it was more like a blend. In Edo State, investment went more into grand mobilization and of course the media push. I wouldn't, of course, at the breakdown per candidate. So if you look at it per candidate in Edo State, you're talking about PDP going as high as 1.9 billion. If you look at it just like that, the figures are on the screen. All right. I think there are quite a number of us trying to also show some of the things that we looked at or tracked completely. These are just pictorial evidence to show, because most of the times, one of the things is that the monitors that are on the field also need to have evidence. So if you look at that, this is also PDP at the local level. That's as a video. I was expecting the sound to come out. All right, but that's okay. That's okay. These are just branded vehicles. These are campaigns. Mega rallies, right? These are also. Oh, okay. These are videos also taken from on the field, but it's okay. Let's move on. Maybe I'll use the audio here so that we avoid complication. Of course, if we move to Ondo State, you see the APC gathering. You see some of the mega rallies in Ondo State. And of course, if you now go to broadcast art, this is the division. You see in Edo State for broadcast art that HLP invested a lot in media when it comes to Edo State. And of course, if you go to Ondo State, this is what it looks like. And these are examples. All right, many of us.
Labour Party. Who's your guy?
Right? So I think now it will resonate with us that we heard a lot of this. Even Politics Today, AIT, even on our right. So right? So a lot of them were out there. And of course, this is PDP, this should be APC. These are some of the hard that we tracked. One of the things that is also, these are some of the hard, okay? But let's go into print media because of time. All right? If you look at the print media, one of the things we saw is that in Ondo State, there were no notable print media hard in Ondo State. Completely, not even one that we saw. All right? But in Edo State, there was so much also that went into print media hard. These are examples of it. You see strip art. You have strip art even on Vanguard, almost every day on Vanguard. You have that also. This is like a local print media in Edo State. I think it's popularly called the Nigerian Observer. So in Edo State also, there was also this emphasis on the local media structure. Okay? Let's quickly move on. If you go to Billboard, this is what it looks like. Now it is gradually coming to the realm of millions, small millions, right? So you have that, so of course PDP spent more here, but in Ondo State, APC spent more in terms of billboards. Of course, these are examples of the billboards that were tracked consistently for the period under review that we're looking at. Of course, let's quickly move to Ondo State. You have all of this. These are just to show us basically some of the things that were tracked. Banners, we have, as low as 400,000 for some candidates. But if you move to Ondo State, there were a bit of investment in the realms of millions. So these are some of the things that were looked at locally to be able to now estimate what it looks like. Of course, posters too. We did a lot of work to be able to also get some of these posters and as much as we can. So these are examples of the posters. All right. I think let's move into some other very important details. So one of the things we also saw that it seems that election day spending is increasingly becoming dominant of the spending categories. Okay? It's increasingly becoming dominant of the spending category. So you see a situation where some candidates spend so much on election day, even more than the period of campaign that is about 150 days. Because the electoral act gave campaign period at 150 days, right? So I think that should be in section 94. But if you look at it a day, then they spend so much more. Let's look at what it looks like in terms of the division. So the blue is the pre-election expenses, campaign expenditure. Then the yellow are the election day expenditure. So if you look at it, there is this uneven relationship. You see pre-election, PDP has as high as 2.5. LP, Olumide Akpata, 2.2. But if you move to APC, when we're in pre-election phase, even when we turn this data, we continue to ask question. Why is this guy having this somewhat mind conversations and all? But by the time we went into election day, we then knew that it seems like he's keeping the bulk of it for the election day, which is also a strategy. Okay? So if you look at it, election day, Monday spent, estimated spending about 2.6, and of course, LP 70, PDP also about 1.05 billion. Okay? When you go to Ondo State, to be precise, Ondo State is also not different. Completely, most of the leading candidates spent so much on the election day. So please, I think you have answers to the question that we all have been asking as election observers. Why was vote buying dominant and was done with impunity in Ondo election? This is it. Okay? All right, let's quickly move on because of time. So we did also break down some of these based on the spending categories. The party agent mobilization is there. You see the estimated vote buying, because one of the things we did was to do vote buying estimation. And of course, election day mobilization fee, transportation, and quite a lot. So this is what it is for each of the candidates based on the total amount spent on the election day. And this is precisely in Edo State. Okay? All right. If we move to Ondo State, it's almost very the same with the trend and pattern also in Edo State. So you see so much more going into estimated vote buying and, of course, the other mobilization fee. I think as much as I can, I've been, during this presentation, drawing specific pattern based on electoral strategy. So I won't bore us with this table because it's basically some of the things I've been talking about. Let's quickly move to vote buying. Now, the question would be, what exactly and how were you able to come up with vote buying? Were you in their pockets? No, we were not. But as much as possible and as much as we can, it behooves on organizations like KDI to also start having ways to be able to track this invisible monster. And that's one of the things we charge ourselves to be able to now come up with methodology that can help us, as to some extent, at least estimate what could have gone into it. So one of the things we did basically is to first of all look at the vote share per LGA for each of the candidates that we're looking at, right? Then we also, as much as possible, move into the observation report of accredited observers by HINEC, the likes of CDD, YAIGA Africa, KDI as an organization were also in both elections, the Nigeria Civil Society Situation Room, and we're glad that this organization did a very amazing work by even giving us in specifics amount that were traded for vote in each of the local government as much as they can. As much as they can. So one of the things we did was to look at the average figure given by each of these organizations put together to be able to arrive at the estimate per local government. And of course, one of the key things that we also looked at is we then looked at what MBC is saying on vote buying. And it was amazing that we saw that even MBS was also talking about vote buying, and they estimated that in Nigeria, as it looks like, 22% of voters are open to collecting money. So it's also very important. So what we did was to look at that 22% out of the vote share within the party. So obviously, we can't say everybody collected money, right? So that's one of the things I need to state that clearly. So if you move, you see the estimation. So this is in Edo State, this is in Ondo State. So in Edo State, 699 million for APC. APC is in red, while PDP is in blue. So in Edo State, PDP 402. In Ondo State, a lot went into it, even more than Edo State. 790. And I need to state this. Now, one of the things we saw, not even from the campaign finance, even from our other intervention, especially around the elections, we discovered that in Ondo State, and this is across all party, not just a party, most of the parties started public outreach very late in Ondo State. In short, elections November 16 for Ondo State, campaign started, and they started flagging up their campaign in most of the parties around October 10 to 15. So that's approximately like a month to the elections. Whereas the Electoral Act gave 150 days. But if you now look at it, on the election day, a lot went into vote buying, estimated figure in Ondo State. These are just the breakdown per local government into heat maps. Then you'll look at Akoko Edo in Ondo State leading the log, the pack of it. About 97 went into it, and you know what that means. And of course, for PDP, these are the breakdown per local government. As much as we can, we did that. And if we go to Ondo State, there is so much red. So it's an heat map for you to know where the concentration is. And that is what it looks like also for vote buying in Ondo State for PDP. And of course, yes, this part is also very key, and I'll dwell a bit on it, which is what we call the cost per vote share. Now, let me explain this very well. One of the things we did was to look at spending efficiency of each of the candidates. If you invested this amount into it, were you able to get the best out of it? That's really the question. So, and we saw this as a major. Okay, let me say that for Edo State, we then see that Adding being, each of the candidates did not spend this money on maybe all of those expenses, campaigns, and all of those. They were decided to give each of the voter to say, yeah, vote for me. So if you look at the vote APC got, that means they paid each of the voter 13,000. LP paid as high as 102. PDP 14. Same thing goes to Ondo State. Now, but let me say this. Why this is very important to us is that one of the things we saw is that from the Electoral Act, all of the election expenditure ceiling, we went back into history and we discovered that if we go back to 2012, Electoral Act, 2012, there were ways that the ceiling were actually determined. To some extent, we learned and we saw that it's 20 naira per voter. So you can spend based on the registered voter in your election demography. Maybe if it is Senate across that jurisdiction, it is the governorship across the state, you can spend 20 naira per voter. It's one of the reasons why we're doing this. And this is the implication and what we saw. As against you, we saying that the ceiling is 1 billion arbitrarily without a guide. We believe that cost per vote share can help us as an option to be able to determine the ceiling. Because by the time we pull data from previous elections and we are able to conduct the cost per vote share, we can then use this to find the average to determine what it looks like. If eventually candidate is going to be spending cost per voter, then it might likely help us to determine what the ceiling could look like. Because that alone has put into consideration inflation. At least we are seeing the spending, right? That alone has put into consideration some other factors. So we believe that this is key. And I wish that the election management body, INEC, is here to also be able to see the merit of some of these things. And it could also help to be able to decide some of these things. Because eventually we can't take out inflation. We can't take out the economic situation of the country from all of this spending. Of course, let's quickly move because of time. One of the things we saw which is very key, is that spending in elections in Nigeria has a strong implication on the outcome of the elections. But it is not the absolute thing. We need to put that clause there because we looked at it critically. And of course, for us at KDI, like we have always done, is to see how we could explain, either through scientific process or through social science methodology or processes, to be able to explain some of the difficult part of our political process. So we went as far as doing a regression statistical analysis to see what the variables, relationship between spending and all. But what we saw is that the R square, which is the value of the strength of the relationship, 53%. So money contributes 53%. If you want to win elections in Nigeria, if you have money, at least you are 53% sure that you are going to get it. But there are other things that contribute to that, which is the 47% from the strength of the relationship. Of course, you can't rule out party supremacy. You can't rule out the candidate popularity. You can't rule out some factors like incumbency effect in Nigeria as it stands today. So this is what it looks like. You can get a lot of details from the report. Very interesting conversation. Of course, if we move and talk about this other aspect. But anyway, from previous data, with all of those English I said, sir, from the previous data of campaign finance tracking in Nigeria, as it pertains to Edo and Ondo, the highest spender always win. So just take it. So if you look at it, 2012, 2016, 2020, 2024, so we have the source of the other data. 2024 is KDI, but 2022 is JDPMC, and CSG has also done quite a lot of work in previous elections. So we looked at it. In 2012, we have ACN. Look at it. The people that were circled are the people that won the elections, and also the money that was spent. So just look at the bar. So you know that the people that were circled, the bar is higher than every other one. It's just to show you that they spent more. So if you go to 2024, you can also see what it looks like. It's also not far from Ondo State. In short, if we look at 2016, 2020 in Edo State, oh sorry, please go back to Edo State, please, quickly. If we look at 2016, 2020, you will know that the guy that won the election, or the man rather, that won the election switched party in between the two election years. It's still the same thing. If you look at it, he moved to the other party, he also spent more. So in Ondo State, it's not far, the same trajectory, the same Ondo State. The same process, the same thing happened also Ondo State. Oh, okay. All right. Of course, I'm gradually getting to the end of this presentation, but there are some things we realize that is also very important to talk about. Number one is disclosure is still an issue in the country. What could be done? There's a lot I've said that I won't spend much time explaining or talking about again. Separating candidate and political party expenses is very key and very important. And of course, there are also conflicting laws within the structure where you now merge KAMA 2020 with the specific provision of the Electoral Act. There are quite a lot of conflicting issues there. I think at this point, I will allow you, when the report is launched, to go and look at some of the other important findings of the campaign finance or political finance of the 2024 Edo and Ondo governorship elections in Nigeria from KDI, because there are other interesting parts there. Thank you so much, and God bless you for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Mr. Femi, for that wonderful presentation. While the presentation was ongoing, some dignitaries we invited walked into the room. I would like to recognize and welcome our own brother, Honorable Prince Adebayo Balogun. He is the House Committee Chairman on Electoral Matters. A round of applause for Prince. The Commissioner of Police in charge of election planning, monitoring, and Evaluation, Mr. Abayomi Shogunle, PhD, also worked in. A round of applause for Mr. Abayomi. Also, the representative of the chairman, Economic and Financial Crime Commission, all the way from Ondo State, Mr. Efa Okim. Please, a round of applause for Mr. Efa Okim. Also, the deputy chairman, Interparty Advisory Council, IPAC, Mr. Dikbo Olayokin. You are very welcome. Also, Mr. Desmond Osa, I beg you, pardon. I will just stick with Mr. Desmond, the program specialist, United Nations Women. You are very welcome. From the European Union, we also have Mr. Osaro Odenwingi. You are very welcome. Also, Cynthia Mbamalu of Yaga Africa also joined. You are very welcome. So we'll just go straight to good message. We started in time, so the program will just keep mixing up the agenda so that we finish in good time. We would like to get goodwill message from Honorable Prince Adebayo Balogun, the House Committee Chairman on Electoral Reform. A round of applause for Prince Adebayo Balogun.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to rely on the existing protocol. But, John, you know I won't let one thing slide. Whenever you come taking a jab at politicians, you say you are a son of not just one civil servant, two. And when I have the AG, the ex-accountant general of Nigeria in my mind, then I don't know how holy the civil service could be. So that's on the lighter mood. You see, when I saw this, the topic of this research, it's an area that you cannot easily put your hand on. I remember when we are doing the amendment process, and we need to look at even some of these offenses, and you try to see how you can even define some of these parameters. If you're talking about expenses, do you really want to talk about the direct funding, indirect funding, the one you know, the one you don't even know, people that spend money that you don't even know? You go to a campaign forum, and you probably go with one design of souvenir, and by the time people, you as the candidate or the party, you go with one souvenir, and by the time people are going, is that you go to a Ashwebi party, and you go with 10, 20 types of souvenirs that you don't even know people who did them on your behalf. So, but it's a good initiative starting somewhere. So it is with great pleasure that I join you at this important occasion, the public presentation of the report on campaign and political financing tracking for the Edo and Ondo state governorship election. This initiative is timely and crucial as it's aligned with the principles of transparency, accountability, and fairness in our electoral process, as enshrined in the Electoral Act 2022, particularly Section 88, 89, and Section 90, which sets the legal framework for campaign financing in Nigeria. The role of money in elections cannot be overemphasized. While financial resources are essential for the conduct of campaign, there is a compelling need to ensure that political financing remains within the legal limits and does not become a tool for undue influence, vote buying, or the subversion of democratic principles. Honestly speaking, campaign financing is a very bitter pill for the candidates and political parties to swallow. It has been a barrier for participation of many credible individuals in political space from time immemorial. In fact, no politician can give accurate estimate of his or her own campaign expenses. Like I said, we talk about direct, indirect, known, unknown. And in fact, I'll give you one good example. There was one junior sister of mine, some few years ago. She said she wanted to contest as a councillor. I said, He said, yes, all the female folks are telling her to go and contest. That she's popular, she's this. I said, hey, have you thought about it? And she was doing fairly well with her business, trading. I said, go and think over this matter. And she started. Well, like a good brother, I gave her the little I could give her. And within about 6 months, our shops got packed up, lost everything. And there was not even, I think there are still over 7-8 months to the election. And she came back and said, this thing is terrible. I've lost my money, all my business. I cannot even enter a cab. 5 people that enters with you, we will expect you to pay for them. I said, I told you should think about this before. But what are the women doing? The women, they say you should come out. They say, they're all demanding money. I said, they are the ones that say you should come out. Don't worry. She said she cannot even walk again now. Anywhere she go, they call her counselor. So, when you are collating your data for election expenses, hope you go to the cabs and see how many people a contestant paid for. How many people you pay for when you get to canteen. Because when you get to the canteen or beer parlor, once you are there, serve them all. So once you enter anywhere, everybody will follow you because they will know that you are going to buy. Once you buy for them. Even as I am, I rather send my driver to go to petrol station now. If I go to petrol station, I know how many cars I will pay for. If it's in my own locality. Because everybody just come and greet you. Elesa, and so everybody in the petrol station, you pay for. So how do you count? How do you put together? And this happens to everybody, not even because you are in office yet. Once you come out to contest, yes, honorable, everybody becomes honorable, and they will come to you. So it gladdens my heart to see KDI bring this to the front burner as a discourse. Considering the integrity of KDI, I am optimistic that this report will be a significant step towards strengthening compliance with the provisions of the Electoral Act as regards accountability in political and campaign financing, thereby promoting credible electoral process in Nigeria. As chairman of the House Committee on Electoral Matters, I reaffirm our commitment to supporting reforms that will enhance the transparency and integrity of our elections. We recognize the need for continuous legislative oversight, stakeholders' collaboration, and enforcement of electoral laws to build a more robust democracy. I commend the organizers, field monitors, data analysts, and all stakeholders who have contributed to this report. Your efforts in tracking and analyzing the political financing trajectory for the Edo and Ondo state governorship election will undoubtedly enhance policy formulation, enforcement mechanism, and a more accountable electoral system. On this note, I urge all political actors, electoral stakeholders, and law enforcement agencies to take the findings and recommendations from this report seriously. Let us work together to ensure that our elections are not only free, fair, but also transparent and credible. Thank you all, and I look forward to the insight analysis in this report. Thank you, and God bless Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Thank you very much. that wonderful commitment. We'll just move straight to keynote address. We hope to end this event by 12:30 on the dot. So we beg all stakeholders to please help us achieve this. We'll be taking keynote address from the chairman of the Economic and Financial Crime Commission, Mr. Olanipekun Olu Koyede, ably represented by Mr. Efa Okim. Mr. Efa Okim will take the keynote.
Good day, everybody. Standing on the existing protocols, I'm here to read the keynote address by Mr. Ola Olu Koyade, the Executive Chairman, Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, at the public presentation of the report of campaign political finance tracking for the Edo and Ondo states governorship election, Abuja Continental Hotel, Ladi Kwali Hall, on the 25th March 2025. I am honored to be here for the public presentation of a report on campaign and election financing in Edo and Ondo states, where off-cycle elections were recently conducted. I commend the Kimpa Development Initiative, KDI, for this effort, which contributes to promoting transparency, accountability, and integrity in the electoral process. The impact of election financing on governance cannot be overlooked. The way leadership emerges often reflects the standard of the electoral process, and concerns about undue financial influence in elections have been widely discussed. When financial inducement and other irregularities interfere with the electoral process, they raise questions about the legitimacy of outcomes and the ability of leaders to govern effectively. The role of money in electioneering can influence voter choice and affect the broader democratic process. The monetization of electioneering can also shape the electoral landscape, sometimes favoring candidates with greater financial resources rather than those with the most compelling vision or qualifications. Ensuring a level playing field is essential for a democratic process where all candidates and voters can participate freely and fairly. Addressing the challenges of election financing is a shared responsibility. A system that prioritizes transparency and accountability in campaign funding contributes to better governance outcomes. After more than 2 decades of democratic rule, discussion on strengthening democratic institutions and electoral processes remain crucial. An environment where elections are driven by ideas, policies, and party ideologies rather than financial strength or other influences is essential for democratic consolidation. The effort of the Kimpa Development Initiative to promote responsible financial practices in electioneering are commendable, and collaboration with relevant stakeholders, including institutions such as the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, is valuable in this regard. The EFCC has been actively involved in addressing financial misconduct in elections, including initiatives aimed at curbing vote buying since 2019. Those efforts, including election monitoring and enforcement actions, contribute to broader accountability measures. While regulations exist to impose expenditure ceilings on election campaigns, enforcement remains a key area for further strengthening. Exploring ways to enhance enforcement mechanism is an important conversation that may require broader engagement. Civil society organizations play a critical role in advocacy and public awareness on these issues. Continued collaboration among stakeholders can support initiatives aimed at ensuring greater financial discipline in the electoral process. On this note, I thank you for listening and wish us fruitful deliberations.
Thank you very much, Mr. Efa Okim, representing the chairman of the Economic and Financial Crime Commission. We are still hoping to see the INEC representative. They are yet to be here. As a result of this, we'll just get questions and responses on the keynote address as given by the chairman, if there are any. Questions and responses. Okay. So we'll just move straight to presentation of the campaign finance dashboard. This will be taken by the head of IT, Mr. Victor.
All right, I think Mr. Desmond have comment. It's not about question, there can be comments too. So I think you limited it to questions. Comment to, please, where is the other microphone? Please, thank you. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you so much, KDR, for this convening. And of course, we also want to thank you for this presentation and the good work you are doing. My name is Desmond. My comment is just like, I want to know, during the presentation, we could see the campaign funding or expenditure of different political parties. Maybe, I want to be very sure, maybe it was not explicitly understood by me, whether there are some a kind of gender impact, or how will I put it now? Is there anything relating to expenses based on candidates' sex? Like, for instance, when you look at Labour Party and other party, you can see that their expenditure, of course, was lower than that of other two major parties. We want to know if their expenses or expenditure was affected based on the candidate they had, which some of them were women or because others were men. That is one. Then two, maybe we also want to know if they were able to do analysis of the campaign crowd. Like, for instance, when some of the crowd were shown to us, we discovered that you could see that of APC, PDP, with a huge crowd. Was there any influence because of the fringe benefit that was being expected by the crowd that actually make those people to participate, or it was because of the posters or the media campaign that influenced people, or there were other things that they expected to get from those parties that brought those crowd to those places? Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I think, so to answer your first question, in the two elections, we don't even have, I think it was only in Edo we had a woman contesting, just one. And when you look at what we presented, you have that, I mean, we discovered that our expenses in that election was 0.03% compared to others. So by the time we triangulate it, I think it's just better for us to stay with the those ones. But that was tracked in the report. You will see it. For instance, when the presentation was made, I think we stopped around 400,000. Yeah, there are people that what we can even track with our methodology and parameter are no more than 53,000. You know, and those kind of people too. You see it in the report. So that is the gender one. But in Ondo, you don't even have any female contestants. So it's difficult to even do gender analysis. Then in terms of the crowd. So when Femi was presenting, we talked about campaign events, taking majority of the, or taking the lion's share in terms of that spread. So what's in the report, you will see what constitute those campaign events. They show us a picture of the campaign events. So you track, we have to track the canopy, the generator, the branding, in fact, the musician. If you bring, I don't know their name, the people in my office that know them. But if you bring them, maybe you bring the video, you just cost it. You estimated that, and that was why we said what we used was a parallel estimation technique. However, going to what you are saying, we also saw that in most of the places that have crowd, so our enumerators, our monitors have to stay. So in some of these places, the moment the campaign ends, the next thing you see is that each of the local governments, every other person go back to the bosses they pay to mobilize them to come. So that is huge money for mobilization. Then in some places, when they were not even mobilized, they were also giving money. So that is another incentive. When the mobilization about the car, the bus that brought them, but again, some collect money directly and leave because they have to be reimbursed. The other one is, other incentive are also T-shirts, some and which it's called souvenir in those particular places, but we broke it down to T-shirt. Some collect face cap, a whole lot of incentive brought them, and some were actually food in terms of pop-off, donut that they shared. So all these things went into those campaigns. That we can see. I agree with Honorable. Most of the money you cannot actually see, but in our report, these are already highlighted, and we put it there. And I am glad that Honorable Bayo also mentioned that, of course, they are committed to engaging with this report to be able to make informed decisions. But, Honorable, one of the things we discover in this report is that we just have 1 billion. Governors should not spend more than 1 billion. Sir, we discover what is the parameter. For instance, our popular analogy, and I'm not looking at this place again. Our popular analogy, if you say governor should not spend more than 1 billion. So the governor of Bayelsa, who is contesting, that have 8 local governments, is going to spend 1 billion. And the governor of Kano State, who have close to 33 local governments, 44, is going to spend 1 billion. Probably there have to be an empirical basis. Instead of that one, then there are some places that are riverine area. It's different from when you are contesting in Oshu, for instance, where you don't even have riverine area. So we trust that some of these things will be looked into and say, look, is this really, for instance, is it really practicable to say in Lagos you are contesting as a governor and your limit is 1 billion? So these are some of the things we feel we look into and somebody. So I may not be able to spend it because of my limit of 1 billion, but go and spend on my behalf. And like Femi said, some of them, the candidate knows, some you don't even know. You just walk around and see your billboard. Somebody is also doing it on your behalf. But some people did it and are bold about it. They even put their picture. Some even walk down and donate. You saw the man that went to the governor of Ondo State that donated the bus, you know, and some people donate like that. But in the actual sense, this is an area we all have to look at. Most especially as we start conversation around independent candidacy is getting the top tier. And we have to really, really look into this political and campaign finance. So, and I think we mentioned political finance for those of you who are just coming. We started on the dot of 10. Apologies. And so the presentation has been made, but I hope you will make it tailored to political finance. For instance, the law says you cannot campaign on election day. In fact, all campaigns stop 24 hours to the election, you remember. But on election day, money is still being spent. So where do you now categorize the money that you, vote buying? Where do you categorize that? So because it's not campaign. So that is why we expand to political finance. So thank you very much. Just before we unveil the report, again, KDI, with the support of FCDO, we are happy to launch the campaign finance dashboard, first of its kind in Nigeria. And thank you very much, Clive. So, all right. So, and just want to make it public. So what this dashboard is going to do is for researchers, for everybody that you are civil society, and even the legislative arm can just go there and look at what some of this tracking entails. We also know that INEC has been tracking the past elections. So one of the things we are doing presently is to, we've written to them to give officially to give us their data so that we upload it, so that we see what the tracking looks like. And then people who have also tracked in the past, I know IFES have done a good job around that through JDPMC. CSJ has also done that. We try to get some of their data and put, but for the 2024, starting from Edo and Ondo, we put the data. And I think let's just look at what the dashboard look like. If you just go to www.polymoney.kimpa.org.ng. So, and then here is it. It gives you it gives you the landing page, and then you have the landing page. This gives you, you have the expenditure, you have the finding and report. So one of the things you also are going to have here is the political party report, campaign expenditure report that we are going to get officially, and then you put it. Then you have the media, and then you have that. So, for instance, this is, which state is this? I think this is Ondo. So when you click it, then it brings out the data for you, and then this is telling you that this is for the top 3 candidates. However, when you see the red, it shows that is above the spending limit of 1 billion. So, and then it gives you the percentage at which it was over. And this is exactly what we have. You can, let's see Edo, and so you can just select from Edo, go to Edo, let's see what it looks like. So you have the drawdown of all the states, 36 states there, and then you are also subsequently, as we move, you now begin to see all the 36 states. The moment we have the elections around senatorial, House of Rep, you see them there, and then we're going to have the presidential. So again, this is what Edo is giving you. If you recall, during the presentation, this was the figure of Edo, and this is the breakdown. Then you can come down here to see what it's like for each of the candidates. You can have them in bar and you can have them in figures. And then you click and then it gives you that. Again, one of the things that my amazing team have been able to do is that this is also being powered by AI chatbot. So what it means, if you want to also interact with what you have here, is linked with Nigeria election. For instance, please, who can read the first question? I think the closer you are to this screen. Okay, how are elections funded in Nigeria? So let's see. Just click and then you can interact on that. What do we have? So it gives you the responses, and okay, here you have, and then whatever you want to do. So you're going to have information from across the years, and this time around, to advocate made easy. So you don't need to be looking for figure all about or go to the National Library. We have gone to the National Library on your behalf, and then we put the information here. And I want to say thank you so much, FCDO, for supporting this. And we are so grateful. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Polymoney. So the link again is polymoney.kimpat.org.ng, and then you have all the information we have, and we intend that you engage with it as we keep updating the information. So at this point, we go into the chairman, EFCC, ably represented, kindly join here, and the IPAC vice chairman. Thank you so much. Thank you. So we are grateful. This is a journey that we embark on June, to be precise, 2020. So that we could be. Yeah. Yes, I was looking for. Cynthia has gone. Auntie Uma is here. Yes, Auntie Uma, please join us. Thank you so much. Sorry, I said Auntie Uma, comrade. Senior comrade. Thank you so much. Please join us. I want to. Thank you. So we started June last year, 2024 to be precise, and then we tidy everything up in December, and then all the clerical work, all the analysis, peer review, and everything before we could arrive here. We are happy for the support. We are happy for even everybody here even supported us. We are so grateful. And to God be the glory. And then we are happy to unveil this. I think, please let's, I think it will be good, yes. Thank you so much. At the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Yes. So, please feel free. All right. So, thank you so much. Thank you. We are grateful. Thank you. My colleague will make sure that everybody have a copy each of the reports. Thank you. Done? Okay. So, as I was about leaving and I was told I am also the one to do the closing remark. So, like I said, we told ourselves in KDI that we will try as much as possible to be keeping to time, whatever we will start at the time we want to start, and then people, when you are coming, you will know that, yeah, they are just going to ask. And so apologies if you missed the presentation, but the gist is in the report. And again, coming after this report is an abridged version of this report in form of a policy paper, policy brief that we are going to also share with us. So once again, on behalf of my team at KDI, on behalf of everybody, I thank you so much for coming. Thank you for being part of this. And specifically, we worked in Edo and Ondo for this election. Our lead monitor in Edo is here. And Folashade, thank you so much for the great job you and Jonathan did for this. ICPC, thank you, the Nigerian police. I'm so grateful. Our lead monitor in Edo couldn't make it because he had to bury his dad yesterday, and so he couldn't make it. Thank you so much. Interesting thing we did was to also bring our lead monitor in Anambra election to also be part of this, so that you can start tracking the money from now. So thank you so much for coming. Everybody, we appreciate your presence. Let me specifically thank two set of people for their contribution to this report. Permit me to thank Mr. Jide Ojo specifically for his wisdom, his experience. Please, a round of applause for him. And Mr. Victor too. Mr. Jide Ojo traveled with us to meet with the stakeholders both in Edo and Ondo. You know, we met with the stakeholders.